Hey there, Michael, High Power Garage. This is going to be my questioning everything episode. So we're going to do a little walk around. Let me take my heavy duty gloves off. We're going to do a little dive underneath, and then we'll start off with what we're doing up here, and just kind of getting some rationalization as to why we're doing what we're doing, or why we're thinking what we're thinking. So I have just mocked up my brand new rad support. I actually went out and bought both of them. I bought this one, just a factory gas one, because everything I read said, oh, you can get away with a gas 460 one, and I also purchased a diesel one. It's a bit pounded to fuck, but it is what it is. So there's the diesel one, here's the gas one. I just mocked the gas one up for now just to see what things would fit like. Use the bolts, I just kind of dropped it in. As you can see, it's just loosey-goosey. And one of the things I've been looking for when it comes to these swaps is that gap right there. What is the distance between the engine and the radiator? So right now, because I've got 2-inch lift blocks in, everything's propped up a bit. But if I take my measuring tape and I get in here, just bear with me a second, you will see that the distance between the radiator and the spindle is 4 inches. So if I can lock this off at 4 and spin it around the other way, just bear with me. So from Mr. Radiator right to the actual, well, I mean, even if I go to the timing case, from the timing case, come on, get in there. Just bugger to do it with one hand. Trust me, it's 4 inches. I measured it, it's exactly 4 inches. So at 4 inches, I guess my issue is, if I move the engine ahead the 2 inches that I moved it back, that basically puts this guy right here. And then my question becomes, if you look at how the radiator is oriented, the radiator is pretty much oriented the same angle as the engine. A little bit differently, not a ton. I mean, if I look at the engine's probably like that. But either way, we're 4 inches at the top here, right? So now the question kind of becomes, okay, you see how it's angled here, right? And why couldn't I just get myself a custom-made radiator that fits right in here, right in this space? Or even if it went slightly in front, yes, the bolts for the hood latch are here, but if you look at this amount of room here, if I basically go from the top, I'm basically getting that additional 2 inches right in there. There's 3 inches back right to the radiator there, from here to here. It's tight at the bottom, of course, but you know, I don't know. I'm just sitting there going, is it really worth it? All this hassle to move this engine 2 inches back just for the fan, when realistically all you need is a different fan. Put the fans in a different location, all the rest of it. Hence why I'm calling this the Question Everything episode. I mean, if the engine moves 2 inches forward, yes, there might be some modification required on the rad support, but it's like, I don't have to do a body lift, I don't have to pound the firewall. I mean, you can already see that if I pulled that thing ahead 2 inches, it just makes all kinds of difference in the world. Yes, I would have to throw away my very fancy mounts and come up with something different, but there are options. So let's go take a dive underneath, and I'll kind of show you why I'm kind of reevaluating this whole scenario. Because, you know, first things first, I drilled and moved the tranny mount the 2 inches. This is based on the engine location provided by the motor mounts. So because you move this back, you have to shorten the drive shaft. So there's my drive shaft right now. I measured it in its static place to begin with. I had to pound that a little bit, but the biggest issue I'm having is that when I climb all the way under here, and I come here, I gotta fix this mess. So instead of this being 2 inches ahead, right in line with that, I gotta pound this out. Not a huge issue. But the big kicker is my shifter. So this is the factory shifter, and it does not want to move far enough back to get into those bolts. So that means all of this mechanism is all out of whack. So if I move the engine 2 inches ahead, I don't have to modify the front drive shaft. I don't have to modify the shifter for the tranny. I don't have to modify the shifter for the 4x4. I don't have to modify the rear drive shaft. I save myself buckets of money. So just because you guys haven't seen this, factory Ford wave ring, factory Ford Cummins diesel adapter, flex plate. This is a factory Ford, well, this is an aftermarket torque converter with lockup low stall 1350. Factory Ford adapter plate. I cleaned it up as best I could. And the other part is I've got lots of room here. So if I go look in here, you can see, let me just spin the camera around here slowly. There's ample room to move the engine 2 inches forward. Yes, I'm going to have to mess with my beautiful mounts, which is kind of a pain in the ass because they were a real bugger to get in there. I had to cut and drill and cut and all the rest of it just to get those suckers in. But I'm thinking I can just fab up some factory mounts, get some polyurethane to put and have it rest right on top of the frame. I'm going to keep it in the same location. I'm just going to try and bump it ahead 2 inches. Oh, I see I even missed a bolt there. Look at that. I mean, these are great mounts. They were a nightmare to put in. They really were. And yeah, I see there's a bolt missing there, which I didn't even remember. So that's why we're calling this the question everything kind of scenario. Now, let me crawl out of here. Just give me the Scooby-Doo. Oh, nice little addition. On the pan for the tranny, I had a drain plug installed. I should have had it done on the bottom because this sits low enough, but at least I can get the majority of the fluid out of it. Or I would have done it here at the back. I didn't install it. I just came across the pan and figured it would be a good go. So I'm going to post this online. Yeah, getting old is fun. Isn't getting old fun? So that's kind of where we're at. So I'm thinking, I've heard a lot of kind of discussion around electric fans and not electric fans, and 460 rads, IDI rads, all the rest of it. And the question is, what gives you the proper cooling capacity versus what fits versus what saves you a bunch of cash? Because I mean, if you think about it, it's $800 for custom rad. I can probably have a custom rad that'll take up that 2 inches. I don't know if I'll be able to get a factory fan in there or not, or something else. I've heard you can get a variety of fans. But the biggest question is, like, this is kind of getting stupid now as far as the amount of modifications you have to make to everything else just to accommodate a fan. Because ultimately that's what we're doing. So we're having to mess with the tranny, we're having to mess with the tranny brackets, we're having to mess with the drive shafts front and rear, we're having to move things around, drill the frame, blah 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 blah. But realistically, if we can just find the right custom radiator, it solves all the problems right then and there. So I'm kind of in question everything mode, and I'm going to think about it. We'll kind of see how it turns out. I would love to get this thing on the road and rolling, but I've kind of reserved it to, I want to be in the place where if I drop a drive shaft, I can just get a factory drive shaft. If I need to get a part, I don't need to have a custom made part done just for my one-off truck. I want to keep it as kind of generic as possible. And the reason is, you know, as I said earlier in a bunch of posts, you know, Ford should have made this truck to begin with. They should have put a 12-valve diesel into a Ford with an E4OD, with a controller, or a ZF5, ZF6, whatever. Man, that would have been just the greatest truck ever. Not that the IDIs or the Power Strokes weren't a great engine, it's just that they did have issues, and also they just weren't, they're just not as reliable as these Cummins. The Cummins, face it, the reason everybody's doing them is they are just beasts, right? So there's 460 radiator, there's room. I mean, the other thing I was thinking about was, you know, what type of fan setup is only, you know, 1.5 inches thick? Does anybody make something like that? Like, obviously, there's enough room right in here, so even if I take 2 inches away, I could have a fan sit on here and run in that space to suck the air through this. You know, I don't know if I gotta build the bloody thing myself or not, or whatever, but yeah, we're gonna move the engine forward, we're gonna make some custom mounts. Hopefully it turns out well. And yeah, that's our questioning everything edition. And I mean, when I look at the factory Cummins fan, here's a factory Cummins fan off of a industrial engine. I mean, it's a pretty big beast, and it is in total 4 inches deep, right? Maybe a little bit bigger. I should probably measure it, but this is what I was planning on using, and I just see with this setup, you know, short of pushing the whole front of the truck forward 1 inch or 2, that ain't gonna happen. Anyways, once again, I apologize for the crappy camera action. This is Michael, High Power Garage, and to all you Cummins tech guys out there, yeah, please post your comments, because we're in this together in more ways than one. And stay safe and wash your hands. Okay, COVID edition 2. Ha! Ciao.